This video is sponsored by Sterling Insurance. Hi guys, welcome back to Van Conversion 101, the video series where we show you how to convert a van from start to finish. In our videos so far, we've talked about some introductory bits and the various steps you have to take before you actually get a van. This included information on how to start planning, budgeting, and how to choose your perfect base van. So if you haven't already, then definitely go check those out. I'll also leave a link up here. While the planning is very important, we were really excited to get onto some actual practical work, which is what we're doing in this video. So today we're going to be talking all about vehicle preparation.
We will have some more content coming up where we talk you through the detailed design process. It's incredibly helpful to have a proper design before you actually start building the van out, and it will save you countless hours during the conversion itself. That being said, you don't really need to have this done in order to start preparing the van, so that's what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah, so in this video, we're going to show you how to take your van from this to this. So this will include showing you guys how to remove all your old unwanted things from both the inside and the exterior of the van. We're also going to be giving her a good clean, making sure she's all sealed and rust proofed, and yeah, just making sure she's ready for the next steps.
First of all, here are all the tools and materials that we used at this stage of the build. We thought about doing a full tool list right at the start of the series, and we still might do that in an upcoming video, but we also thought it would be more useful for us to let you guys know exactly what tools and materials we're using every step of the way.
Yeah, so there are some tools which you might not need until later on in the build, and that way if you're on a budget, you don't need to buy them right at the beginning. In this video, we're going to be using a variety of tools, and we've kind of split it into the essential ones and then ones which we just think are quite nice to have and make things a little bit easier.
Or maybe are specific to the type of van you got, because we used a few things.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a transit.
For the essentials, we've got a orbital sander. You can get these with a variety of different sanding pad grits, if that makes sense. A combi drill, this one is really important. You're going to use it throughout your build.
Yeah.
And it would be good to get a drill bit set like this. This one's from Ryobi, but it comes with drill bits.
Various different screwdriver attachments, sockets and things.
That.
Hole saw set is also important. That's something that you will need at various points throughout the build. Various different hand tools, files, screwdrivers, both Phillips and Torx head.
These don't have to be new or anything. We've got this giant box that's filled with things that were Will's grandfather.
Yeah, my granddad used to work in a factory that made files, so we've got a load of really old rusty files. The things that come in handy, definitely a set of pliers, maybe some mole grips, utility knife, hammer.
These last things are things that we used a lot during this portion of the build. It's a socket set, a trim removal kit, sealant gun, and cleaning items like sponges, brushes, just random bits like that.
A few of the kind of non-essentials, or things that you might end up using. An angle grinder, if you've got any racking or metal brackets that are actually attached to the van, then you might need to cut these out. Again, an angle grinder is something that you'll use throughout the build, so it's worth investing in one of those quite early on. A heat gun as well, also quite useful when you get around to doing your electrical work, because you can use it for all of your heat shrink and things like that.
That being said, we didn't use a heat gun in our previous van conversion. No. We literally put the shrink wrap over the kitchen stove. So you don't necessarily need this, it's just sort of nice to have.
I probably wouldn't invest in a heat gun unless you are getting decals off.
When you actually get around to cleaning the van, you're probably going to need a water hose of some kind. And then some of the materials that we used, white spirit.
We had both an exterior sealant / adhesive, used Flex 40 FC, which is something that we recommend at work, and Hammerite rust-proof paint. Again, you'll end up using that anytime you're making a hole in the van, so it's important to just get a tin right at the start.
You don't need to get Hammerite, it just needs to be a rust-proof paint. Replacement rivets, and if you don't know what rivets are, which I didn't,
if you don't know what rivets are, they're little plastic fasteners that you're going to find all around the exterior of your van, and probably on the interior as well, because they were holding up all of the plastic sheeting on the sides of our van, and they're a nightmare. They're so hard to get off. Lastly, we just used some nuts, bolts, and washers.
So yeah, something like that.
That's a bolt, yeah.
I mean, obviously you've seen these before. We used M6 ones, is that right?
Yes, we did. But it depends on the size of hole you have in your roof. Before we get onto the work that we've done in the last couple of weeks, we wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor for the Van Conversion 101 series, Sterling Insurance. They are the UK's #1 insurer of van conversions, so whether you're taking short breaks, holidays, extended trips further afield, or if you're still in the conversion stage like us, then they have a policy for you.
One of the things that we've been most impressed with since we found Sterling was their customer service. The Sterling team are super helpful and informative, and they're available to call if you need any help with your policy. If you prefer to do things online, then you can also get a quick quote through their website.
Once you have a policy, it's super easy to keep track of the details with a My Sterling online account. You can view your policy documents, keep track of payments, and even request changes to your policy at the click of a button.
If you're starting out on your van conversion journey like ourselves, then definitely check out Sterling for your camper van cover. We put a link to their website in the description down below. Van preparation part 1. Clearing out the interior. When you buy a secondhand van, it's almost always been used for work or something previously, which means
They've almost always been used for something. Yeah.
yeah, so they're probably going to have something on the inside.
They'll probably have something on the inside.
This is what our first van looked like before we converted it. It had plywood everywhere, plywood on the floors, plywood on the walls. It had this weird cupboard on the side.
Oh yeah, that's right, it did.
Yeah. So in our current van, it had metal van racking, which was the first thing that we decided to do.
There are lots of different types of van racking. In our case, they were bolted to the floor and also bolted to some metal rails, which in turn were bolted to the metal frame on the inside of the van. Removing all of the bolts in this case was actually quite straightforward. These two bits of racking are currently bolted together. Most of these are like welded pretty hard, you know. So I'm gonna just use this little end part, get some leverage, and then hopefully, oh, there he goes. They'll come off a lot easier and we can get these two bits separated. I tried using the drill on these, but they're far too tight, so. Nice. We have known of vans that have racking which is actually bonded or even welded to the sides, so you might need to get the angle grinder out. But in most cases, it should be relatively easy.
Yeah, and then while we were doing this, we also found a battery.
Oh my god. Ooh! A free battery. So because our van was used as a highway maintenance vehicle, it had an inverter in here as well. We sold the inverter pretty much straight away, but we hadn't actually uncovered the battery yet because it was kind of hidden at the back of the van racking. Van racking is actually surprisingly valuable. We put ours up on Facebook Marketplace as soon as we took it out, and somebody had contacted us later in the day.
So yeah, with anything that you find in your van, check what it's worth before you decide to just throw it in the bin. But yeah, like the racking and also the battery and the inverter that were in our van, we put them up on Facebook Marketplace and they sold pretty much immediately.
Removing our van racking was pretty easy. It was just a case of unscrewing all the bolts and then lifting each section out. I did find the socket set was really, really useful at this point. Getting to some of the screws with a screwdriver or a drill proved quite difficult, and the socket set is useful for kind of getting to those hard to reach places.
After this, the van was looking quite nice, you know, bit cleaner. Bit more empty. Right. In our van, we have a bunch of wires running from the cab area all the way to the back of the van, and along it there was a length of plastic conduit covering those wires, so we took that off. But we haven't done anything with the wires. We've just left them as they are for the moment.
The majority of these wires are staying in, so they're the cables for the rear lights and the reversing camera and things like that. But there are some that we're going to remove. There are some interior lights on these cross beams, and there were also some cables for the highway maintenance lights that were on the top. So they're all going to be removed when we get around to doing the first fix wiring.
There'll be a whole video on that. The reason we took the conduit off was so it was easier to take the wall panels off, which we'll get to in a sec. Before we did that though, we took the floors up. So we're just ripping up our floor now, and yeah, it's going okay.
So we've only just started getting the floor up today so we can give everything a bit of a clean. It should be quite an easy process. It's just a case of unscrewing all of these little screws that are fastening the floor into the metal below. They are like a little bit dirty and it's kind of wet and horrible if you can't see. Do you want to show the outside?
Oh yeah, it is actually disgusting out there.
So yeah, it's wet all on the floor as well. So we are just cleaning out all of the screw holes with a little wire brush and then trying our best to unscrew them. No problems so far.
Depending on how old your van is, you might have more or less difficulty with this job. Like in our previous van, which was 2014, we had so much trouble doing this. The screw holes were so gunky and they just didn't have like the heads on them anymore.
Yeah, a Mercedes Sprinter has like this big lock bolt thing. Anyway, ours were covered in gunk and were really hard to get up, so we ended up just ripping the floor out and then cutting the bolts with an angle grinder. That's like a last resort. Hopefully you don't have to do that. This floor seems easier though, it's just screws.
I remember when we did that, it took us just like a couple of days to do that one job. And we felt so defeated.
Because what we were trying to do, they had these Torx heads and we were trying to get enough leverage to like pull them round, but they were just all getting de-threaded before they started to unscrew. So we just, I don't know why we didn't think of it sooner. We should have just cut them out from the get-go.
But yeah, if you're going through that, then
just
it's
go
okay.
straight to the angle grinder, rip it all out. But if you can avoid ripping the floor, you can use it as a template for when you end up doing the subfloor.
Bye.
Sometimes it can actually be difficult to find where the screw heads are. So I'm just kind of going along the seams of the floor with this wire brush. And you can see where they start to get revealed. There are two that we can do there.
And then, yeah, like I said before, we removed the panels, the plastic paneling from the walls. Like we said, you might have plywood panels. It's pretty much the same. The difference with ours was that they were secured in with rivets, which were really, really annoying, actually.
Yeah. Plastic rivets are very, very difficult to get out. There are similar things, which we'll talk about in a minute, when you take the trim panels all the way off the outside. We tried a couple of ways to get these off, mostly just pulling them with pliers to start with, but it was very, very difficult. What we actually ended up doing, because we got very frustrated, was we ripped all of the plastic sheeting off the walls and then decided to go back to the rivets later. I found the easiest way to get these off was using the trim removal tool.
Which actually makes perfect sense because it is for
That is what they're designed for. Yeah. So this tool with the metal end was really, really useful. Just get yourself behind the rivets and pop them off. But another good tip, if you've got any particularly stubborn ones, would be to drill straight through the middle. Once you drilled through the middle of the rivet, they should pop out quite easily, but try to make sure that you're not pushing plastic bits into the side panels of the van, because that can be a little bit annoying.
Obviously, we had plastic panels all along the walls, but then there were also ones on the doors as well.
Here is just getting these last little panels off the back doors. So the top ones are screwed into the metal, the bottom ones have more little pop rivets, so it should just be a case of pulling them out. It'll be nice and easy.
It's so cold. It's so cold.
It's not happy. Part 2 is removing all of the trim pieces. One of the reasons that we're doing this is so that we can respray all of these pieces and make the van look a little bit funkier. So we're going to be adding some other kind of off-roady upgrades to make it look a little bit nicer. Our next video is going to go through that entire process, so make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified when that comes out.
Obviously, we're painting them, but the main reason that you remove these trim pieces is so that you can seal all the little holes underneath them. This basically stops any water from penetrating the van or getting into the walls of the van, and prevents things like mold and damp. And
just rainwater pooling in the side panels can be a nightmare.
Yeah, just, you don't want any of that stuff. No. Whether you're painting them or not, you have to take them off.
We bought a really cheap trim removal kit from Amazon. This contains a few different plastic removal tools which can help you pry these trim pieces off. Most of them are just held on with a series of pop rivets. So you should be able to get one of the tools behind and just leverage the trim piece off. Try to identify beforehand where the rivets are and then get the tool exactly over where that point is. This just helps make sure that you're not breaking loads of the rivets while you take them off, because they will need to be replaced if you do.
Some of them are going to break and it's fine. You just have to buy a box of rivets to replace them.
Yep. You should be able to find the right make and model for your van on eBay.
Also, before you actually remove each piece, just make sure that they're not screwed in. So check all of the sides of the pieces. Check up behind the plastic pieces to see if there are any screws in there. You can also see where it connects to the other plastic pieces.
Yeah,
or,
so you can determine which
pieces.
order you need to do them in.
Yeah. For us, for example, the bumper, the wheel arches, the panels over the doors, all of those had little screws in as well that we obviously had to unscrew first.
For the panels over the doors, you can just open the doors and you'll be able to see the screws on the inside. For ones like the wheel arches, you're going to have to get your head under there and just make sure that there aren't any screw heads on the underside.
If you do break any of the pieces, that's also fine. You can find new pieces on eBay. In fact, we had to buy new ones anyway because some of our trim pieces were a little bit damaged. They were warped a little bit. So we replaced our rear bumper and the 2 corner pieces. What I will say is that the ones on eBay might not be an exact match to the one that you have on your van. For example, ours didn't have the little holes for our parking sensors, which meant that we had to go in there afterwards and make those ourselves. So don't throw away your previous trim piece before you've actually installed the next one. A, it's really good to use as a template for things like the sensors and
Screw
using
holes.
yeah, and B, yeah, we actually popped out the parking sensor holders and then reinstalled them on the new trim piece.
At this point, we also removed our rear bumper, our front bumper, and the grille as well. This is not something that you'd need to do if you're not repainting them.
Yeah, you only need to do the side pieces
Yeah.
because they're the pieces which have holes underneath that actually enter into the van.
This is also a good opportunity to just give your trim pieces a little bit of a clean and a polish, kind of spruce them back up and make them look nice before they go back on.
Realistically, if you're not painting these, then hopefully this is just a 1 to 2 day process. Part 3, clearing the exterior.
Now, it might be the case that once your trim pieces are off, the exterior of the van is done. You might not have to bother with this step at all. But in our case, because our van was a highway maintenance vehicle, we had a few more things that we wanted to remove. These included some beacon lights that were up on the roof, some LED spotlights as well, and also a massive highway maintenance decal on the back doors.
A giant booty sticker. Yeah. It wasn't the vibe.
For the lights, it was quite an easy process, but it was a 2-man job. You have to have one person on top to hold the bolts and the other one underneath to unscrew them. If your drill bit set comes with some sockets, then you can use these to help get the bolts off a little bit easier. But also a socket set and a pair of pliers or mole grips will do the job as well. Once we had removed the lights, we were left with a load of bolt holes around the roof. Some of these we are going to reuse as cable entries when we do things like the solar panel and any LEDs and things that are going on the roof. But some of them are going to need to be sealed up, so we'll get to that in a minute.
All right, it is time to tackle this big sticker.
A couple of ways you can do this. I think, judging by how easily that started, you can see that there. The easiest way to do this is just with a heat gun. Heat up a little bit of an area and then it will peel off because you heat up the adhesive underneath. The other way to do it is with a toffee wheel. So that goes onto the drill and it spins and it kind of rubs this off. It's like a rubber wheel.
Yeah, but we probably won't use that because the
heat gun seems to be working
really
well, so we probably won't use it, but yeah. I've seen people do that as well.
Okay. We just found that peeling the sticker off with the heat gun was the easiest way to take it off. In fact, it was really easy. Once the sticker was off, there was quite a lot of sticky residue underneath. So we used this product called Sticky Stuff Remover, which I think you can get from arts and crafts stores.
Or B&Q.
Yeah, or B&Q. Then White Spirit. You should get this in bulk because this is a lifesaver. But you can just squirt that on the back. Leave it to marinate. And
You know this. Basically, any plastic brush will help you get the sticky stuff off with a bit of White Spirit.
And then afterwards she was looking all sparkly and clean. So pretty.
Part 4, washing. So after all of those old structures were removed, we took the van to have a bit of a clean. We actually don't have access to a hose where we are right now, so we just took the van to a garage car wash. We just sprayed the inside and the outside of the van with a power hose.
This worked so much better than when we used a hose in our previous van. It just was a lot quicker, way more satisfying, I gotta say. I'd probably recommend doing it even if you do have a hose. It's just faster.
We did also clean all of our trim pieces in preparation for, sanding and painting those.
Also guys, we have a load more short form satisfying videos over on our TikTok and Instagram. So if you're not already following us on those, then I'm gonna leave a link to those in the description. We're really fun over there.
There's a lot more cat content over there.
Yeah.
If you like cats and van cats, go check that out. Once you've cleaned the van inside and out, it's important to make sure that everything is dry and also that you don't have any metal shavings or pieces left on the floor of the van. Just helps prevent any rust build-up before you start rust proofing.
Yeah.
Also, if you have given it a spray wash, just maybe make sure that there isn't any water pooling in the side panels, things like that. Part 5. Removing dents.
If you watched our introducing our new van video, you'll know that our van had a couple of minor dents in it. And while they're minor, we decided we did want to try and get rid of them. We initially went to some bodywork shops
This is also when we were looking for quotes for respraying the van, so we thought we'd do the two at once.
Yeah, I think we went to a couple. There was some more niche body workshops, and then we also went to things like Dent Magic, which I think is across the UK.
Well, they were all really nice. They gave us some really good advice, but they were quoting kind of over £1,000 to fully repair the dents.
For us, that was out of our budget. One of the guys, when we went to go get a quote, mentioned that we could possibly just replace our back door where we had the biggest dent. If this is something that you're also going through, that might be a route you want to take. We were looking at eBay. That's where a lot of scrapyards put things up, but I guess you can also visit scrapyard. Unfortunately for us, there just didn't happen to be any correct doors at the time we were looking. But I think ideally, if we had found one that was perfect, that would have been what we would have done.
As it was, we decided to take it into our own hands and try and fix them ourselves.
Today we are trying, it is late in the day.
What have we even done today? I don't know.
We basically missed the entirety of the day doing other stuff. But anyway, we are going to try and get all of the dents out of the van.
Semi-removed, I think. If we can do, you know, a decent job at getting them out. We've got a few creative tactics that we're going to try and use to get the dents out.
We already got one of the little dents out that was like in the side of the van. We thought we were going to have to use one of those PDR kits, but actually Will just went inside and popped it out with his hand. So because of that, we actually didn't get a chance to test out our PDR kit.
So for the big dent, we did have a backup plan, which was to cover it up with the ladder that's going to be going on the back door, but we wanted to try and get it as visually appealing as possible beforehand. The way that we decided to do this was to cut some holes in the back door. We were going to end up doing this anyway because we're going to be filling them with insulation.
We have a big hole in our door.
Pretty good. But to start with, we wanted to use the holes to try and push the dent out from the inside.
So yeah, the videos that we're overlaying is us pushing it out from the inside. What ended up happening? We have never done this part before.
Yeah.
And we got quite frustrated because we wanted it perfect and it wasn't ever going to be perfect. And so that's why the video stopped, because we got pretty mad, a bit upset, and we just stopped filming.
We did manage to heat the metal from the inside. Don't heat the metal panels too close or for too long, because you might damage the paint on the outside. Especially if you've got a white van, you could end up with a little yellow patch, or possibly even have the paint bubble and come off the surface. We put some wood inserts in there and tapped it out gently with a hammer. And we did manage to push out the main dent, but you're never gonna get the surface of it looking perfect. There are always gonna be some small bobbles and imperfections in it. So we went back to plan A, which was to cover it up with the ladder.
In terms of dents, like we said, we're pretty new to that, all that stuff. Realistically, we'd have liked to just replace the back door, and that's possibly something we'd recommend if you've got big dents.
Or if you have the money to do it, then go get it done with the professionals, or use a proper paintless dent removal kit.
Not one off Amazon, because they suck.
They don't work.
Part 5, rust proofing.
Rust proofing is a really important step in the preparation process. If left untreated, rust can eat away at the body of your van and cause massive structural issues down the line. So it's really important to deal with this right off the bat before you start putting insulation walls and things in. What you'll want to do is go around both the interior and the exterior of the van and identify any areas of surface rust. You can check the depth of the rust by pressing your finger down on it. If it remains hard, then it's probably just surface rust and you can start to sand that off. If the surface crumbles away, you are looking at more deep penetrative rust, in which case you are probably going to have to completely remove the affected area and replace it with some welding work. Surface rust, on the other hand, is really easy to deal with. Because our van is on the newer side, we were quite lucky and we don't actually have a whole lot to show. But on the interior, we did have some little patches which had started to show signs of rust. So the process to deal with that is just to sand or use a wire brush to take them back to bare metal. Give them a quick clean off. We use some white spirit, and then when they're dry, you can go on top with a generous layer of rust-proof paint. Part 6, sealing exterior holes. As you can see, we have finally got everything painted. So we're just gonna go around the van and pop it all back on.
All right, so we've taken off our trim pieces and now we've got all of these little holes underneath that we're going to sealant them up. And this basically makes sure that water doesn't get inside the van and get trapped in between like the inner wall and the outside of the van. Because when that happens, you can get mold and stuff like that, which we don't want, obviously. We're using Sudaflex. We got it from uksealants.com. You can also order it on the B&Q website. So we want a complete circle all around the hole. When we put the trim pieces back on, the rivets, which will go in these holes, will form a watertight seal with the sealant. Perfect. We did a generous bead of sealant around all of the holes, and then we made sure that any broken rivets were replaced on the trim pieces. These are quite easy to just slot back in. And then we popped all of the trim pieces back on.
That took 4 takes.
We popped all of. And what happens is that all of the pseudo flex gets squished together, closes any holes. Science.
At this point, we also needed to seal some of those holes in the roof that we mentioned earlier. Again, this probably won't be a problem for you, but we're going to tell you how to do it anyway. The easiest and most secure way to do this is by putting some bolts in with washers, and again, using more of that Sudaflex 40FC to make sure that everything's watertight. We are going to be covering some of these bolts with some little rubber tops, which makes them look a little bit nicer as well.
Part 7, removing the bulkhead.
We decided to do this last, which made the spraying out of the van a little bit easier so that we weren't damaging anything in the cab, but you can do it at any time if you're going to clean it a little bit more thoroughly.
We're about to take the bulkhead off, and yeah, what are we going to do, Will?
We're going to take the bulkhead off. That's our first main job for the day. It's the last thing that we're doing in like the preparation phase of the van. Hopefully it won't take too long. We've just got bolts all the way around here that we need to undo, and then we can get it off. Which is nice because it's one of those jobs where you don't have to do very much, hopefully, and it'll transform the way that the van's looking.
Got a little van on the mission logo. What's it called? Like magnetic
thing. So that'll be appearing in lots of videos, I'm sure. We used the drill with a Torx head attachment, unscrewed all of those big screws, and then lifted the bulkhead out.
Some people say that you can sell your bulkhead, so give it a try. We did, and no one wanted it. Which is kind of what we thought would happen, because why would you want a bulkhead?
Bulkheads. Yeah, sure.
And we still have ours, so if anyone wants it, please hit us up.
Anyway, now we have a completely empty shell of a vehicle and we can proceed with some of the fun stuff.
Yes, because this has been so boring. Here's what our van is looking like at the end. I mean, you can kind of see it behind us as well. She's looking pretty clean and ready to be She's looking pretty and clean and ready to Can't wait to actually get onto designing and putting stuff into this space to make her look like a cute little tiny home.
We've got some design ideas, but it's not finalized yet.
Again, if you want to see our design ideas before our next episodes, then follow us on Instagram and TikTok, because we'll probably be asking you guys what you think about them as well.
You may have noticed that the exterior is looking a little bit more green. So again, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in our next video, we are going to be talking about everything that we did to make the van look a little bit more interesting and add some off-roady upgrades as well. But we'll be talking a lot more about this in our next Van Conversion 101 video, so make sure you follow along for that one.
As always, hit that subscribe button, give us a little like if you enjoyed the video, and also leave us a comment.
Yeah, tell us what you want to see happen in the van.
Okay, bye.